Hi, welcome to Ilagan Startup Funda. Today we have with us a great visionary and one of the person who has pioneered the outsourcing CFO model in India, starting with startups to mid businesses and other activities. So presenting to you Jayant Tiwari, let's hear what he has to offer as a business model. So Jayant, why don't you tell us something more actually what you have been doing and what has been your core strengths and stuff.
I started my outsourced CFO practice in 2004 after spending 10 years as a line CFO in various SME companies. As a full-time CFO in 4 companies, I was responsible for over $32 million of equity funding. And then I came to the conclusion that this is something that I can do and on a multiple company basis fairly effectively. Over the last 6 years, I have been responsible for over $50 million of equity funding in my client companies, and where that is where I am right now. For me, the outsourced CFO function is a function predominantly of corporate strategy, guidance and supervision to both the management team as well as the finance team of my client companies. I have found that most small and medium enterprises here are fairly lacking in terms of determining their financial strategy, in terms of what would be the best for them to do financially to facilitate their growth over the medium term. My client relationships have typically culminated in a funding transaction, which have with company valuations at multiple times their revenue. And I believe to a large extent my success has been, the client success has been because of the way their financial structures have been implemented, which have facilitated this funding transactions. I'd like to talk about a few of my early clients. One of my first clients was a company called Proteans Technology, which was promoted by these 4 engineers in the 27-28 year range. They had been operating for a couple of years before I got involved with them, and fairly profitably at that, but their financial structures were not really amenable to any funding taking place. Within the first 6 months of my engagement, we raised funding from from Karnataka IT Ventures at a valuation which was 3 times their current revenues. Within 18 months after that, the company got acquired by a US-based listed software company at a valuation of more than 4 times their current revenues at the time. The upshot of that was that there were these 4 32-year-old engineers sitting with $1 million each in their banks and $150,000 jobs while continuing to be based in Bangalore. That was one of my first successes. The issue was that the issue is actually that while you are operating a business, the business itself can be run profitably or unprofitably as you choose to. That is more a matter of policy than anything else. But the way you package your financials, the way you present them, actually determines whether you can access growth capital at all or have to rely purely on plowing back your revenues and your profits and using those as the sole engine of your growth. I believe funding is available to all companies at various points of their growth, but it is only available if your financial package has been designed and implemented in a way that facilitates the funding and does not act as a barrier to funding. That itself is the core aspect of my offering as an outsourced CFO.
So how do you think, Jayant, is the market or the concept actually picking up? Is it, do you still think, or what is the reason why it is not picking up much, or is it picking up? How do you rate it, kind of?
I think the concept is picking up. There are, I know of one more agency in Bombay which is doing similar work. I am sure there are a few more whom I am personally unaware of. But I believe that the orientation in most of those, or most of the run-of-the-mill outsourced CFOs is more inward facing and auditing, accounting and compliance oriented. I believe that is only 50% of the problem. The real solution that is required is from a financial strategy perspective. And there, unfortunately, I haven't seen anyone, at least in India, with the capability and the track record to actually show that it works. I believe I have both been lucky and fortunate to have been able to present this package to various, should I say, far-thinking entrepreneurs with whom I have engaged at various points of time. And that has borne fruit for them as well as for me. I think the concept itself is extremely practicable. It is strongly beneficial to entrepreneurs, but the standard barriers to the adoption of this service as well as to the propagation of it are the fact that most entrepreneurs do not really realize the importance of it until they are, should I say, in a big enough mess for which it takes a lot of time to actually turn things around. If this kind of a competence were available to them much earlier in their life cycle, I believe they would have grown much faster, grown much bigger, and made much better investment targets than without such a concept being implied.
Thanks, James. So, going forward, what kind of challenges you see to pursue this kind of concept to the others? How do you think we can get more entrepreneurs tuned to this idea and getting more profitable down the line?
See, from an entrepreneur perspective, I think the entrepreneurs who will adopt this would be ones who have actually should I say, come to terms with the requirement, have seen what the value that financial expertise brings to their company, and are thus willing and able to take up a service of this nature. The challenge from the service provider perspective is very different. The fact is that until you have actually been a CFO for a reasonable length of time and have gone through at least one or more funding transactions as a CFO, you really do not know what it takes to be able to provide this as a service. I personally have been on the lookout for partners or associates to join me in my practice for more than a couple of years now. I have found a lot of interest from the consulting domain, people with expertise in consulting, but I have found they have been extremely superficial in terms of their knowledge of the nitty-gritties of a company operation, which are absolutely crucial to delivering this service at a reasonable level. I think the challenge is that most senior finance professionals are so caught up in the corporate path, moving from small companies to large companies to better designations and better salaries, that they are not really interested in coming into a consulting model, which I must say makes the monthly paycheck a matter of risk, but is immensely satisfying from a professional perspective personally.
Thanks, Jayant. Any tips you would like to share with all the entrepreneurs?
The first thing I'd say has actually nothing to do with finance. I believe that any business can be run profitably. That is something that entrepreneurs must actually take as something cast in stone. I have interacted with too many entrepreneurs who believe that the first couple of years of business must actually be at a loss, and only then would they achieve a certain level of volume at which break even would arise. My own experience has been to the contrary. I believe if you are sure that you will not take up a contract, not take up an engagement, not take up a relationship unless it is profitable for you, then you will look at a different kind of potential clients who recognize the value that you are able to deliver, and thus will work with people who are able and willing to give you fair remuneration for the service you deliver. I think it is very important for entrepreneurs to have the strength to say no to an unprofitable contract and only take up contracts on which they make money. The quantum of money is a matter of decision making, but I do not believe at any point of time should you actually take up an engagement only for top line while compromising your bottom line.
Thanks, Jan. Thanks a lot. It was wonderful talking to you and learning some insights on the finance and CFO tips. Thanks a lot for sharing your inputs on Ilagan Startup Funda. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.